So in this session, we are going to talk about the AWS Developer Tools. AWS Developer Tools allows you to host the code, build, test, and deploy your applications quickly and effectively with the developer tools. You can leverage the tools like Software Development Kits, SDKs, the code editors, the continuous integration for DevOps software development, or you can use machine learning, guided best practices, and abstractions to improve the agility, security, velocity, and the code quality. Out of these four things, the software development kit, the code editor, we are going to discuss in this session, the continuous CI/CD developer, the continuous integration and delivery, or the CI/CD developer tools, we are going to discuss inside our DevOps session, or you would have already gone through the DevOps session in your previous batch. Apart from that, the machine learning, guided best practices, and the abstractions can be used in part of the machine learning course of AWS. In this session, we are going to talk about the software development kit, SDKs, and the code editors. Like you would have seen inside the previous sessions where we did work on IAM and users, we are going to use the same inside this session also. We are going to use the software development kits in which we are going to work on Lambda. However, this can work as your standalone code also. Apart from Lambda, we'll also write few scripts inside our CLI or AWS command line interface to go and work on CLI as a script. Apart from that, we'll also be working on few code editors. Lambda already has a code editor in place for Node.js and Python. Apart from this, you can also use the tools like Cloud9 service, where if required, you can go and create your own developer tool and you can go and work inside your AWS code repository, or you can go and take help of Cloud9 service, which is an interactive development environment or an IDE for writing, running, and debugging the code. This is the things that we are going to do in today's session. So let's get started. First thing that we will do is, because we want to go ahead and create our scripts, first thing that we will do is we'll go ahead and launch a simple Ubuntu server on which we will be deploying AWS CLI. So let's go ahead and do that. I'll take a T3A medium instance right now, and I'll be launching it with a known key pair for myself. Once it is done, let's wait for the CLI instance to boot up. I have used a T3A medium instance. You can go ahead and take any of the instances, which can be from T family or C family or M family or R family or whatever your organization is working on. The burstable instances, by which I mean the T instances, and especially the A instances, which is the AMD instances, are the cheapest in the region of Mumbai or AP South 1. That's also the reason why I have chosen those regions. So now that the instance is all ready for us, let's go and make a connection with the instance and let's start to work on the same. To make a connection with the instance, I will use SSH, or the way how you connect with the Unix instance. Next up, we will go and run the update scripts so that we can ensure that the instance is all updated with the software packages, which may include the security packages of this particular operating system. The operating system can be figured out in two ways. First, if you open the instance and you scroll down, the AMI itself should tell you that this is supposedly working on Ubuntu Focal 20 or Ubuntu 20. Note that this is the AMI that was used. If in case you have upgraded your instance from Ubuntu 20 to, let's say, Ubuntu 22, which should be live by while the time you are watching this video. It should be available inside AWS. So in that case, if you have done a upgrade from the instance, this will continue to show you Ubuntu 20 only. So the next way to figure out my instance type is by a command, which is lsp underscore release hyphen a. This is not dependent on the AMI. This is going to tell you what exact operating system this machine is supposedly working on at this very moment. Looking at this, I can understand this is Ubuntu 20.04 and it is LTS or long-term support, by which it means that the support of this machine at least should be for the next 5 years. So if it was launched in 2020, it means at least the support should be there until 2025. If you are interested in knowing more about the Ubuntu LTS releases, you might just want to go and open the Wikipedia page, scroll down to the releases, and you can see Ubuntu 20 LTS or long-term support is to be there till 2025, which is the general support, and the security support is to be there for the next 10 years. This is the general life cycle of any operating system. For instance, Ubuntu 16 still has the security updates until 2026, though the general support of this operating system has expired. Similarly, for Ubuntu 18, it should be expiring by 2023 April. When you see this 04, it generally means it was released in month of October in 2018 for long-term support. Similarly, it was released in October of 2021, and this again was April of 2020, April of 18, which also means that Ubuntu 22, while the time when I'm recording this video, has already been released on April 2022. Okay, so let's go back and connect with our instance, which we have already done. The first thing that you want to do over here is to ensure that AWS CLI is installed on your machine. We are going to do this via two ways. If we have to install AWS CLI inside Ubuntu, you might just want to go and search for AWS CLI Ubuntu, hit the first link that you see, and you can go and just run these specific commands, which are going to install AWS CLI. Apart from that, you can just go hit AWS and just run the command, which it is telling, press Y and AWS CLI will be installed inside your machine. Once AWS CLI is installed, you can confirm that by typing AWS again, and it will not give you the error saying that AWS CLI is not installed inside your machine. AWS CLI depends on various underlying softwares like Python, but you don't have to worry. CLI should automatically take care of it and install it. If you are working on the older operating system, you might need to go and install those specific dependencies themselves. The same should also be present inside your documentation of CLI. And finally, this is available both on the x86 as well as the ARM processors. So now if we go back and just type AWS, it should not give me the error that this command is not found. Next step is to configure my AWS CLI with the specific username that I am going to use. So for that, let's leave this for now and go back inside our IAM service of AWS. In this, we will go and create a user which will have certain amount of access to that specific machine. So I'll click on add user. Let's call this user as AWS bot, which will be having the programmatic access, which means it has the access key ID and the secret access key. Next, we have to go and give some permissions to it. In my case, I'm just giving it the permission for EC2, and I'm also giving it the permission for S3. Next, you can go and add the tags. So the name of the user that I have created is AWS-bot. I can also add some other things like created by here and created on something like this. Now, these tags are not mandatory, but Tags help you in understanding your resources because in reality, there would be hundreds, if not thousands of resources inside your AWS account. And you generally might forget what each instance was created for or what each resource actually means. In that case, tags will help you a lot. Next step, review, and you click on create user. At this step, you are shown two things, access key ID and the secret access key. One point to note over here is access key ID will be visible to you always. However, the secret access key is only visible to you one time. If you go ahead and close this, you cannot go and retrieve that secret access key. Yes, you can go and reset your secret access key, or you can go and generate a new pair of access key ID and the secret access key. But just in case you happen to lose that secret access key, there is actually no way by which you can get it back. So in my case, I'll just note it down. By the time you are watching this video, I would have already deactivated the user and the secret access key. So just in case if you try using it, it will give you a access denied or access key not found error. So for now, let's go back and run a command AWS configure. The concept behind AWS configure is I am saying that inside my Ubuntu machine, I have installed AWS CLI and I will be going and running certain commands. These commands have to come up from a specific user. So where have I actually configured the user as of now? The answer is to configure that, I will be running the command AWS configure, where I am given the access key ID. I enter that. It will ask me for the secret access key. I copy that. I will be asked for the region. My region right now is AP South 1. Though IAM is a global service, but still I am inside AP South 1. So I'll be typing that. And finally, the output format, I am giving it as table, though it can be text and JSON as well. So if everything is done, just to check out if so this user that I have created will have access to specific services only. And this user, if you want to know what are the services that they have accessed over the past few minutes or time, in that case, you can go ahead and take help of your access advisor, which is going to monitor the usage of this user activities. Apart from that, you can also take help of your AWS CloudTrail activity. Going back to check what all user has access to, and actually if the user has access to specific services of AWS, we will be using the first command line tool, which is AWS CLI. Inside AWS CLI, this is a common tool by which you can manage your AWS services. So just by one tool, you can go and work on any of the commands of AWS. Generally speaking, we try to work with AWS CLI as much as possible because once you create the script, the same script can be used at multiple places. There is also something known as AWS Shell, which right now is in developer preview. And you also have something known as a Cloud Shell over here, which you can see by going to Cloud Shell at this moment. So you have two things. If you want, you can go and take help of your Cloud Shell as well. The concept remains the same, what I am going to show you now. So using AWS CLI, you can go and work on any of the commands of AWS or any of the series or services of AWS. To check out, you can always go and type AWS help, which is going to give you a list of all the commands or all the things which are there. You can also type something like, let's say, AWS S3 help, which is going to tell you all the commands of S3. You can scroll down if you want to know more or press the enter key. To exit, you just have to type Q. It is basically your normal editors inside your Ubuntu operating system. So let's go and take help of our first service. Let's say AWS S3 on CLI. If I do that, I will be opening the first page that I see, which is this page. And all I am worried about at the moment is these available commands. And that's pretty much it inside CLI. To check it out, let's go and try out few commands. For example, ls. So if I go ahead and type ls, it is also going to give me the example, what and how can I use this. So it will first of all tell me the how can I actually use it, and below it will be giving me the specific examples how it can be used. So let's go and check it out. For example, if I type AWS S3 ls, it is going to give me list of all the buckets that I have created inside AWS. If I am looking for a specific bucket or any specific thing inside one of the bucket, I might want to go into AWS S3 ls S3 colon / and the name of the bucket, which is going to go and tell me all the folders which are present inside that bucket. You can very well go and do the same by visiting your S3 console also. But the thing is, if you are doing it via CLI, you have better options because everything is available to you from the command prompt itself. So for instance, if I had to go ahead and search for this bucket, I would have searched for the bucket, go inside the bucket, and I see the same old things here also. These all data are present inside your JSON format. So these are basically the logs which you are seeing. So because I had configured my bucket at the log, so this is how the logs are actually going to look like. Fine, this was one of the commands, AWS S3 ls, to list all the buckets or to view any specific bucket. Ideally speaking, just going to examples should give you a good idea about how to use those specific commands inside CLI. For example, I am looking for a specific prefix or a specific subfolder. For instance, my subfolder is AP South 1 over here. I might want to go and give AP-South-1. And if there is anything present, it is going to go and tell me that indeed there is a folder present, and apparently inside it, I have whatever data I have given. So this is the folder, and then this is how we can go and manage the logs. In short, this is going to go and list anything that is there inside the bucket. The command stands for ls. Just in case if you happen to forget it, remember AWS CLI commands are almost the same as your normal Unix or Linux commands itself. ls is to list inside Unix also. For example, if I open my command prompt and I just type ls, it is going to tell me if I have any folder over here. Similarly, ls inside S3 or CLI is also going to behave in the same way. One catch over here is AWS CLI generally will give you all the examples of all the use cases which are possible. For example, assuming I was working on AWS CLI and EC2, and if I had opened up this link, it is going to A, show me all the commands, B, assuming I need to go and stop my instances, it will give me all via the examples itself. So looking at this itself, you can understand because you are working on AWS EC2, the command should be starting as AWS space EC2 space stop hyphen instances space hyphen instance ID, and you can go ahead and give your instance IDs. In which case it is going to stop the instances or reboot the instances. How the IDs are going to look like, it is telling you over here. So it will be hyphen instance hyphen IDs, double quotes, and it's string 1 or string 2, or you can just give the IDs as it is. If you happen to understand this, good. If not, no worries. AWS below would have given you the examples also. So just by looking at this, you can understand that what is the way in which I need to send this data. And it is also telling you the output which it is expecting or which you should expect in this command actually works out. This you can see at various other places. For example, AWS SNS, and if I am looking for CLI, let's take this example. If I have to go and let's say create a topic, in that case, I just have to go and run this specific command as it is. And it tells me the command name also. So it's pretty straightforward actually. But if you assume that AWS is going to give you an example of each and every command, that is also not true. Let's take example of AWS Cassandra, which is also known as key spaces inside AWS. And if I go for CLI over here, and I open up this link, and these are the commands which are present inside key space. If I have to go inside any one of them, for example, create table, and if you scroll down and down, you will see you don't have any example over here. But there is a reason for that. This is a comparatively new service. So AWS is not showing you the examples. It expects you to go ahead and understand it yourself. Anyhow, we understand in key space, if I have to delete a key space, I need to give the key space name. So it should be something like AWS delete hyphen key space hyphen key space name space and the actual name of the key space. And that should be pretty much good for me. It will go ahead and delete the key space or even create a key space. Take a contrast with this one and with this one where AWS is giving you the complete example. What I want to tell you is that it's not important that the example is present for each and every service of AWS. It is quite a possibility that you do not see any example as such. So just be prepared for that. So let's go ahead and test out an error scenario where if I try to go ahead and create this as it is going to error out. And this error actually is meaning something. And the meaning of that is this user, which is AWS-bot inside my account, is not authorized to perform. The moment you see an error, try to look into it, and that error itself should tell you what the exact reason for this is. In this case, it is telling me there is no policy that allows create topic action. In short, this user is not authorized to perform any SNS operation. In short, going back to IAM, this user only has access to EC2 and S3. In case I need to give it SNS access, I need to go here. I need to go to the existing policies. And if I were a group, I could have as well added as a group, but that part we are not doing as of now because you would have already seen that inside IAM. For now, I am attaching the policies directly of SNS, review, and add permissions. If I do that and I just go and run the command again, it should ideally work out for me. Right now, it doesn't work out. The reason for this is whenever you add a permission, it is a asynchronous operation. What I mean is it doesn't mean that the moment you do this, at that very moment, it will start working. If you try out generally after 5 to 10 seconds, it will work out. For example, it will work out now. Earlier, it did not work out because it takes time in the policy to get updated throughout all the data centers of AWS along with IAM. So looking at this, I can understand that indeed a topic has been created. So this is the basics of CLI. So let's go ahead and start to write certain scripts. We'll be writing a very basic script inside our shell. You can go and complicate it as much as you want. So in my case, what I will be doing is I'll be creating two folders. Inside that, I will be creating, let's say, 2 files each. Then I will go and create a script which is going to copy the content of those folders and place it inside a bucket of my choice. Once it is successful in doing that, it is also going to go ahead and send an email to me telling that the job has been successfully completed. And similar thing we are also going to do inside Lambda also. So if in case I need to go and get an email, I obviously need to go inside my SNS topic first of all and add myself as a subscriber so that I can show you that indeed I got the emails. My topic was my topic. I'll just go ahead and add my email over here. So let's do that. And at this moment, if it's all good, I should see my email, or at least I should see something which should ask me that the confirmation has to be done if I want to listen to that specific topic. So in this case, if you see, I indeed got a message that yes, I have to go and subscribe to this. I'll just copy the link and place it over here so that you can see that. So let's do that right now. If I do this, it should say you have successfully subscribed, which means if I go back to my topic and I click over here, I indeed see the ID coming up. First thing that I want to do is I want to see if I am indeed getting the emails or not. So even before I start to write the script to send the emails, I'll just go ahead and send a dummy message to ensure that yes, I am receiving the messages. So for that, let's go for publish over here. And the way to do the publish is going to examples and searching for that specific message. What you should pay attention over here is if I have to publish a message on a phone number, it is something like this. If I have to send it on a specific topic, it is something like this. The thing to pay attention is I also have to give a file, which is something like message.txt. So first thing that I will do over here is I will create a folder where I will write a folder as messages, and I will go inside this folder of messages. I will create a file as success.txt and I will say, hi, the operation is completed. And I will also go and create a file by start.txt and I will say, hi, the operation has started. And I also go and create something like end.txt and I will say, hi, the operation has ended. And let's remove the success.txt. So if I see now, I have two files, start.txt and end.txt. Let's go ahead and just modify the start.txt so that it looks visually better. So I have two files now, start.txt and end.txt. First of all, we'll just go and do a dummy run to see if my messages via SNS are indeed being sent. So the way to write it is AWS SNS publish and -- topic -arn and then the topic ARN inside double quotes. My topic ARN I'm going to get from here. So if I just go and give this followed by the file which I am looking for, the file name is -- and then I have to go to file :/ and let's try with start.txt. It gives me a unique ID telling that yes, it seems the message went through. To prove if it went or not, we'll actually go and test it out on the email and end.txt. So as of now, I should have received 2 emails from AWS telling that yes, the operation has started and yes, the operation has ended. As you can see on this window right now, I got a message, hi, the operation has started at 1:09 p.m. and hi, the operation has ended, same at 1:09 p.m. So basically, this simply means that indeed my SNS publish is working. Now we will go ahead and write the script to go ahead and create a bucket, update these 2 files inside the bucket. And while you start your specific message, you should send a message, hi, the operation has started. And once everything is done, you should run the message saying, hi, the operation has ended. So these are the things that we are going to do now. So let's go ahead and create a batch file. So let's go ahead and create the script to do this operation. So let's call it as file or file.sh. And let's write the first command to send the success message to my specific file. So what I'll do is I'll just copy paste this and What generally I prefer is I write it on my VS Code itself because it makes it easier for me to understand. So let's go ahead and do that. My topic ARN I need, let's remove this special symbol. Topic ARN is this over here. My advice would be just put this topic ARN or write it on VS Code at least. So let's call it as start.txt. Next, I have to go ahead and write the script to add or create my bucket. So let's go ahead and do that. So for that, let's go for AWS S3 CLI. So AWS S3 CLI, this one. And let's go for MB or make bucket. Next up, this. So next command will be to create. So let's call this in my name itself, Ankit-log-1. Next, I have to go and update anything which is inside that folder inside the bucket. Now that the bucket has been created, I can just go and copy those files or command or whatever is inside that folder to my bucket. For that, you have two options. You can either use a CP. CP is to copy a local file or an object. When I say file, you understand a single file. So if this has to expire, you can do that. You can even copy it from a bucket to a bucket, or you can even copy it. So bucket to bucket will be this. You can even copy it via the expiration time, which means this file will automatically expire at this specific time limit, whatever you have given. This is one way to do that. You can also do it recursively, basically. So anything which is inside the folder will all get copied. What I am rather going to use is something known as a sync command. Sync command basically syncs the directories and anything inside the folder continuously to my specific bucket. So I'll just go ahead and use the command. So my command is AWS S3 sync dot stands for anything inside the folder, followed by S3:/ and the bucket name, which is this. And once this is done, we'll just go ahead and send the message again, which will say end.txt, which means as of this time, this bucket or whatever files were copied are all synced also, bucket is made also, and you have sent the message also. Once this all is done, generally just go and put it inside the file, this and over here, and just run it by giving the bash command. And that's pretty much it. First, it would have sent the message. Next, it would have created the bucket. Next, it would have copied everything inside that specific bucket. And next, it would have sent me 2 emails telling that indeed the operation was successful. So first thing, let's go to our email engine and see if indeed I got the messages. Yes, I did get the messages, earlier one at 1:09 p.m. Now I got it at 1:15 p.m. saying that yes, the operation started and the operation ended. SMS engine was never a problem for me, or the email engine was never a problem for me. The thing is to check if this bucket has actually been created or not. And if you have been following till now, you know the command is AWS S3ls. So the moment I do this, I should see my bucket coming up, and it tells me that indeed this bucket was created at 29/04/2022 at this specific time. But we know the time right now is 1:16 p.m., isn't it? So why is it saying 7:45:16? The answer is this all works on UTC time. My server indeed is working on the UTC time itself, which is nothing but GMT. So my server time is 7:46. And if you go up, you will see almost the same time for my bucket being created. However, if I want to go ahead and view the content of my bucket, AWS S3 list S3:/ and the name of the bucket, which was something as Ankit-log-1. If I give this, it should tell me that indeed there are 3 files present inside that specific bucket, starting from the time when it was uploaded, followed by the size of that specific file. This can be seen from here also. This can be seen from your shell also. Or if you go back to your S3 and you go back to your buckets and you just go and remove the filters and sort it based on the creation date, you should see your bucket coming up here also. If it doesn't show up, no worries. It does take time, but you can just refresh the page either, or you can just copy the name of the bucket. So my bucket was Ankit-log-1. If I don't say it now, if I did not see it, assuming I would have done a search by that specific name. In this case, anyhow, because I see it, I'll just click over there and I see my 3 files inside my specific bucket. So now let's go back and again have a look at the script that we created. This is the script. You can go ahead and complicate it as much as you want. You can go and create the same script inside Python or inside shell script or inside the scripting language of your choice. This is one way how you can go ahead and create this script. Lastly, let's go and shut down or terminate this instance itself. Now, I can ideally go inside my EC2 and I can terminate my instance itself. But rather than that, we will go and again take help of CLI. Remember, a CLI can do anything, including terminating the instance on which it is running itself. So what I'll go ahead is, I'll go ahead, search for terminate instances, which is this, copy this, paste it. It will give me an error, obviously, because this is the dummy instance ID. So what I'll do is I'll go ahead and get my actual instance ID. So if you go to instances, you see this is your instance ID. If you just go ahead and paste it and hit enter, this instance which was running will now be terminated. And just because it is terminated, my connection also closes down. Let's exit the shell, refresh the page, and I indeed see my instance is shutting down, which means it should get terminated in some time. This is method number 1 to go and work on your developer tools via scripting. Just because I had created the user, I'll also go ahead and delete the specific user. Done. Remember again, it's not advisable for you to go and share your user access key or the AWS access key followed by the secret access key under any circumstances. You should never keep it inside any of the public or private repositories. Private is for you only, yes, but you should avoid keeping it inside the private repositories as well. In any case, you should not share your secret access key and access key ID with anyone. Going back to my EC2 instances, I do see that my instance has been terminated and I don't have anything inside my IAM user. Which brings us to the second and the last part for our developer tools, which is something known as Lambda. Lambda for us is a serverless code basically, which simply means that I can go and run any program inside that specific environment of Lambda without even managing the servers. In very simple words, Lambda is a serverless, event-driven compute service that lets you code for virtually any type of applications or backend services without provisioning or managing the servers. You can trigger Lambda from over 200 services, and this basically is an example of SaaS or software as a code, because you are only paying for what you use and you are just using the software of Lambda. A typical use case of Lambda, which is actually used by certain companies, is, let's assume a photograph is taken from any of the cameras, which is uploaded to my S3 bucket. Now, the moment my S3 bucket gets the image, a Lambda event is triggered, and this event will trigger Lambda, which in turn will go and resize the image and make it into the sizes as can be seen in your web, in your browsers, or in your tablets, or even in your mobile devices. So any of these use cases can be used. Lambda can be used for file processing, for stream processing, for instance, Kinesis, web application, for example, the websites using API gateway, for the IoT applications, for example, using Amazon Grass, and mobile backends, for example, using API gateways. It can be used for virtually any case of scenario that you can think of, because the thing is, Lambda is easily integrated with any of your services of AWS. So now what we will do is we'll go ahead and create our first Lambda function, which is going to do a few things, which will be starting an instance. We'll go ahead and stop the instance, and then we will go ahead and integrate it with other services of AWS, which will include EC2 and SNS. In short, Lambda program can be made in any of the code. That is what we mean by AWS SDK, or Software Development Kit. This is present for many languages like C++, Go, Java, JavaScript, Node.js, .NET, PHP, Python, or Ruby. But in short, if you go ahead and search for any of them, for example, AWS and let's say EC2 and SDK, the first link itself that you are going to see will be JavaScript, the same which can be used inside your Node.js also. So let's go ahead and create our own Lambda function. But before that, as you would have already seen inside your IAM classes, Lambda as a service, if it has to go and access or work on other services of AWS, you need to go and give Lambda the access or the permissions to go and work on other services. For this, you will have to go and give Lambda as a service the permission, which means we have to go and create a role for Lambda. This role will be attached to multiple policies on which Lambda is going to work. In my example, what I'll be doing is I will be starting an instance and I will be sending a notification that the instance has been started. The use case for this can be that, let's say I have a EC2 instance in place, and if my EC2 instance stops for whatever reason, Lambda function will trigger and Lambda function will start the instance, followed by the success or the error emails. In the next step, like we said, Lambda is an event-driven compute service. Next time we won't trigger Lambda function, rather we will create an event by which Lambda can automatically be triggered, which will eventually go into the same thing of starting the instances automatically and sending me these specific notifications. So let's get started with that. For that, we need to go ahead and create a role first of all. So I'll click on create role. This is for our AWS service, and this is to be used by Lambda. Don't get confused by EC2 and Lambda. These are the most common use cases. That is why they show up over here. If you have your specific requirement, like you are working on RDS and you are looking for migration, you can go and select RDS over here. For instance, if you are working on Redshift, you can go and select Redshift over here. In my case, because I am working on Lambda, I'll be choosing this. I'll be clicking on next. I will go and attach the policies. In my case, I will be working on EC2 and I'll be working on SNS, or simple notification service. Once this is done, we will go and give this role a name. So let's call it as Lambda-EC2-SNS. And I'll say this to work AWS services, and let's write the services will be EC2 and SNS. And if you scroll down this, you will see that Lambda uses a assume role. This step is rather important because almost certain, if you are preparing for the interviews, they will ask you that what is the way by which Lambda can go and work on EC2 and SNS. Yes, permission is the way, or permission is the policies that you are attaching, or simply said permission. Verbally only it is telling you that I am the permission, I will allow Lambda access to SNS in EC2. But how actually is Lambda able to attach itself with those services? The answer is assume role. Keep this in mind, rather important, especially from the interview's perspective. Next up, if I click on create role, if a role by that name is already existing, it errors out. And the reason for that is rather simple. The SNS name of this role actually contradicts, and we understand that SNS cannot be duplicated. So I select Lambda EC2 SNS hyphen, let's call it something unique like hyphen all, and click on create role. If everything has been done, we will just go and remember this name. Next up, we will go ahead and create our Lambda function. But before I go to Lambda, I need to give this example, and to prove that it is working, I need to work on a EC2 instance. So what I'll do is I'll just go ahead and create a dummy EC2 instance. It is not doing anything as of now, but eventually in reality, in production, this will be an actual instance which would be performing any activity starting from a web server to an app server to a database server. Let's call this instance as instance 1, or simply put I1. And this instance should get booted up. That's fine. Next thing, I'll go ahead and talk about my Lambda service. So when you are creating your Lambda service, if in case you have any function inside that specific region, it is going to show up. Remember, Lambda as a service is dependent on the region. However, the roles that Lambda is using are global in nature because that is IAM for you. So what I'll go is I'll go ahead and create a function from scratch because I want to write the complete function. Let's call this as, let's say, auto or start hyphen EC2 hyphen instance. You can choose a runtime of your choice, .NET, Go, Java, Node, Python, Ruby, or any of the older environments like Node 12 or Java 8, or you can create your own runtime inside Lambda also. I am working on Node.js, so for that reason, I will be selecting Node.js 14, which also happens to be the default runtime for Lambda. You can choose the architecture where you want your code to work. It can be x86 or ARM64. The advantage of ARM64 is that it is comparatively cheaper as compared to your x86 processors. More about it, you would have already gone through it when we were talking about our EC2 instances. Next, the most important thing for us, creating the role for Lambda. This is the function that we did some time back when we created the role, which was Lambda EC2 SNS all. So let's go ahead, use the existing role, give the name, and it should automatically tell me if a role by that name is existing. If not, it is going to go ahead and give you all the possible roles which are there. Because I already had it, I can go ahead and click on create function. Now the only thing left for me is to go ahead and create this Lambda function, which is going to perform the activity. And that's it inside Lambda. So again, like last time, instead of coding over here, which can be done pretty much, instead of coding over here, I'll start coding inside my Visual Studio Code. So let's get started with it. This part here, let's just zoom it in and save a file. Let's save it by any name. The advantage of saving the file is that if at all there is any error, it is going to tell you well in advance. So let's go ahead here and create a new file and save it, let's say by the name of index or code.js. JS because I am supposedly working on Node.js or JavaScript. Now the only thing left is to go ahead and create my code. And what that code is going to go, it is going to go ahead and so let's just think of a use case. Let's say if my instance is stopped, it will first send me an email telling that instance has stopped. Lambda will try to automatically start the instance. After that, it is going to go ahead and start the instance. After that, it is going to go ahead and give me the warning that EC2 instance has successfully started, and it will just give me that simple notification. So it's going to be based on 3 steps. A, start the or send the notification. B, start the instance. And C, send me the notification again telling that the instance was successfully started. instance. So I have written, as you can see, this is start EC2 instance. Going back and just having a look at what all the things that we did, we first of all had started by saying that I would be working on AWS Sdk or the AWS Software Development Kit. My region will be AP South 1 or whatever region I have selected. In my case, Lambda and EC2 both are inside AP South 1 or Mumbai. So I'm selecting that, followed by S3 equal to new AWS S3. This thing is not required as of now, but we have to go and replace it with whatever functions I have to write below, with whatever services I need to write. Next, we write something as initial function. Again, not mandatory to write it as init function. You can go and name it anything. But in reality, we actually try to give as logical name as possible. So for that reason, I'll go and name it something like init function and init function. And then I'm just going to write the basic skeleton structure of all my functions that are present inside that specific code. For example, I would be sending an initial notification. I would be starting up my EC2 instance, and I would be sending my final notification. So let's just go and write the functions as it is. The function structures I haven't mentioned as of now, but eventually we will go ahead and write the code inside all of them. So first thing that I want to go ahead is using the send initial notification. So in this case, what we need to do is we have to get the program of AWS Sdk to send the initial notification. So for that, what I am going to do is AWS Sdk for SNS over here, and we will send or search for the function of publish. So let's go ahead and write publish and copy the complete code and paste it as it is. If you feel it is pretty easy because I just have to do copy paste, you are in the correct place. Indeed, you don't have to do anything on top of it rather than just copying pasting the SDK things that are present inside that specific libraries. To add to it, you can remove the things which are not required. For example, message attributes, deduplication ID, more for queue, group ID, message structure, phone number is not required. Target ARN is not required because I am not sending message to a specific subscription, rather I am sending it to the whole topic. So that's it. That's pretty much my message. Let's go and add the message over here. Let's say, hi, your or EC2 instance has stopped. AWS Lambda will try to start up the instance. We also need to give the subject. So generally subject, we give something as the codes just by looking at which you can understand. Instance stopped. As you know, if someone would be looking into this on their phones, on their email, they don't want to even open the message. It should be something so that just by looking at the subject header, I understand what is the context. So for that reason, topic ARN is the ARN of my topic that I gave over here, which is my SNS. I can give simple notification service. I go to topics and this is my topic ARN. Remember, the moment you copy paste it, it goes to the next line. So just remember to put it like this. And if it is an error, we generally, if else, we generally prefer writing it with the brackets, though if you want, you can write it in that way only. This is just your own standard, how you want to write. I prefer it this way. You might prefer it this way. There is no hard and fast rule for that. So I prefer it this way. So I'll be opening up with a bracket and I'll be closing it up with a bracket. Again, I'll be opening up with a bracket and I'll be closing it with a bracket. So this is what my first initial notification function looks like. Second, I have to write the function to start up my EC2 instance. For that, I will go for AWS, EC2, and SDK. If I do this, I just have to write the program to start up my instance. So let's scroll down and search for start instance over here. And I do see my start instances here. Let's go here copy the complete thing and just paste it as it is. Again, the commented code, if you want to keep it, you can keep it. I prefer not keeping it, so I am removing it. Once again, you can start and you can end it with brackets. You can start and you can end it up with brackets. And that's pretty much it. The only thing, you have to give your instance ID. Which instance ID? The instance that you created some time back, which was inside your EC2. So let's open up that. And this happens to be my instance ID. So I'll just go ahead and paste it. Again, the moment you do this, remember, it adds certain spaces. So just be cognizant of removing those spaces and not anything else. So this is my start EC2 instance. And similarly, I'll go ahead and send my final notification. I can copy paste it from here also, but instead of it, I'll just show it to you again. So what I'll do is, let's start from the very beginning again. AWS SNS for SDK. This one, and I want to go ahead and publish my message. Copy the complete thing here, remove the things which are not required, like message attributes, deduplication, group ID, structure, phone number. Target ARN is also not required. I just need the topic ARN, subject, and the message. Let's get the topic ARN, which is this. And this, and the message, let's put, hi, the instance was successfully started. No action is required from your side. Okay, and subject, let's put it as success 101 instance recovered. Now, please don't confuse recovered word by recovering the instance. That is something else. You can even make it instance started. Okay, so if everything is good, the last thing, bracket opens, bracket closes, bracket opens, and bracket closes. And now the last thing to understand inside my Lambda. This is a general programming construct. Basically, you have created functions over here. The problem with functions, or the property of functions, is that the functions cannot invoke themselves. Or rather, someone needs to invoke the functions, which they can even do themselves, which is recursion, but someone has to call or invoke the functions. First function is already invoked, init function, but this function apparently is not doing anything. That is why you see this function is not grayed out. However, these functions are grayed out because VS Code itself is telling you, you have written up 3 functions, but actually no one is invoking them. So it doesn't make any sense to write empty functions. So what I will do is, init function goes over here. I'll just write a sample message console.log. Let's call Lambda started. And this internally will call this function, which is send initial function. You see now it is no more grayed out. These two are still. So what happens is it will call my init function, which in turn call my send initial functions, which in turn should call my start EC2 function. So what happens is, if it is erroring out, in that case, don't do anything. However, if it is successful, do a thing, call this function start EC2 instance. So start EC2 instance, this is calling, which means in turn, it goes to start EC2 instance, which is starting up the instance. And if it is successful, do a thing, call the final function also. And this should pretty much be it inside your Lambda. One important thing to understand is this line, which we have missed out till now. So let's go and fix that. So SNS, the moment you open up SNS, it's going to tell you something on the top itself. So if you see inside this, you have written SNS.publish, but what actually is SNS? This program doesn't know. So what you will be doing is, if you scroll up, in the beginning itself, it is going to tell you that SNS is a variable which is going to use AWS and SNS properties. Similarly, you have to go and do it for your EC2 also. You might have guessed it. Indeed, it should be something like this: EC2 equal to new AWS EC2. Yes, that is correct. However, let's go and one last time open CLI for EC2 and see it for ourselves. This part here, whichever functions you want, you can go ahead and work on them. Okay, I opened up CLI. Let's open up SDK. And just copy this, just like we had already guessed it also. We can go ahead and do this. Now you see S3 is not required. You might want to remove it. If you want to keep it, you can keep it. Depends entirely on you. So if you look at this function from, if you haven't followed and you look it up at the first time, it might look confusing to you. But in reality, you see, this is calling an initial function, which in turn is calling initial notification, which in turn is calling start EC2 instance, which in turn is calling send final notification. And that's pretty much it. Done. Now you just have to go copy the complete thing, go inside your Lambda and paste it. And that's it. That's Lambda for you. Now, just to test it out, because this is apparently starting my instance, so let's go ahead and stop my instance just to test it out that indeed is the Lambda function working as expected or not. So let's wait for it to stop. Once the Lambda function has, or once the EC2 instance has stopped, we are going to start with our Lambda function and we'll see indeed if it is able to start my function or not. After which we will go ahead inside our events, which is the last thing for us. Now that my EC2 instance has stopped, we'll just go ahead and start my Lambda function. And ideally, this instance should automatically start with my Lambda. And I should also receive few emails for that. Let's check it out. So start EC2 instance. First of all, click on deploy. Even if you forget, don't worry. Over there, it will tell you that changes are not deployed yet. Finally, go to test and let's create an event like, let's say, test event 1 and click on save. And after that, deploy. Anyhow, if you want to do it again, it won't because you have already done that. So it's grayed out. Click on text. And if everything is good, it should first of all tell you that yes, Lambda function started, which was apparently my code over here. I had only written Lambda started. If everything was good, it should have sent me an email. So that is what it tells you or shows you here also, that yes, message was sent. Yes, the instance did start. And yes, the notifications were also sent. The important thing is Lambda ran for 1437.69 milliseconds. So it will bill you in the nearest milliseconds, which is 1438 milliseconds. It ran only 128 MB used, which was the size, and it used only 84 MB, and it took only 681.17 milliseconds. In this duration, the Lambda function was executed, the environment created, and your resources also. So the services also executed in the same duration. This is Lambda function for you. By the way, if everything was good, it should have started off the instance, right? Let's refresh it and we see instance is running, which apparently also means that in this case, if I go down to my emails, first I got the email E101 instance stopped. After that, I got success 101 instance started, and this is the message. This is something known as infrastructure or automated infrastructure management that you want to do inside Lambda. But think about it. Just in case, if you have to go, your instance stops, will you actually go and run a Lambda function for that? Or is it easier for you to go and just click here and select EC2 instance or start EC2 instance? Obviously, I do not want to go and do these things manually. Even if I am going and executing my Lambda function manually, it is as good as going and starting my EC2 instance itself. So the last part of Lambda, event-driven architecture. You see, the moment you stopped your instance or you started your instance or you terminated your instance or you performed any activity on the instance from AWS level, that is counted as an event. You starting, you stopping, you rebooting, you terminating is a event, which means if my instance stops, that is an event. If I could somehow listen to that event, and somehow if I capture the event of instance stopped, and if somehow I could trigger my Lambda function, this Lambda function, which means the moment my instance stops or goes into stopped state, this event will be captured by some service of AWS, which in turn will simply go and call this Lambda function. If this is done, apparently you have a self-sustaining infrastructure which can take action on its own. And indeed, you have a service inside AWS which can help you with this. One of the most popular services of AWS, something known as Events Bridge. The thing is, Events Bridge earlier was inside CloudWatch itself. So just in case any one of you is looking into CloudWatch right now, and you think that indeed I did see it earlier, yes, it was present inside something known as events inside CloudWatch itself. But now such a popular service that event services have automatically moved to Events Bridge. And this is not the only place where you can receive the events. You can even receive it from external application like Zendesk, MongoDB, and PagerDuty. So you don't have to work on anything. Events Bridge will automatically capture the event, and it is going to show you that event or take any action on that. For instance, let's go ahead and create a rule in which let's call it as start EC2, and description, let's say, trigger the EC2 instance automatically. And click on next. This can be based on a schedule also, which can be a cron job, but schedule again is running automatically after some duration. I want it to be as dynamic as possible. So the moment you stop, that very moment someone should capture that. So that is the event pattern basically. So if you click on next over here now, and you say that I am listening to EC2, right? Which one? If EC2 instance there is any change. EC2 instance state change notification. So what are you looking for in case you are looking for EC2? Inside EC2, if your instance state changes, and inside that, if it goes into your stopped state, and you are looking for a specific instance whose ID happens to be this. Now, as you would have understood, you can complicate it to as many levels as you want. You can go and add whatever functions or states you want. For me, this should be good because EC2 instance change, if it goes into stopped, and this instance, in that case, just go and call a AWS service with service Lambda. And inside Lambda, what do you want to call this function? Click on next. Click on next, or if you want, you can go and add the tags also, something like, let's say, created by, and let's give something like maybe region, and let's say AP South 1. It can be whatever tags you want to give, like we have discussed already, and then create rule, which means you can shut down everything else now. Nothing you have to do. If in case by any chance this instance is stopped, AWS will automatically take action. Have a look at the mails again. The last one was sent to me at 1:51 p.m. Okay. So this, if at all, this all is automated. If by chance someone goes and stops my instance, pay attention to the instance state. If by chance it is stopped, I have stopped it, but in reality, if by chance someone stops, it goes into stopping state. Obviously, in some time it will go into stopped state. And the moment it goes to stopped state, my event of stopped state is triggered, which in turn should trigger my events bridge, which in turn should trigger my Lambda function, which in turn should start my EC2 instance. So actually, all of this infrastructure can be automated. It went into stopped state. Eventually, it goes into pending state. I'm not doing anything. I'm just refreshing the page, and it goes into running state. which means that your events page caught that specific event, triggered the Lambda function, and Lambda function automatically went ahead and started the instance for you. You might say that there is some downtime in this, in which case you can use auto scaling group to ensure there is no downtime, and you can take some other actions also. This is just touching the base of my events bridge and Lambda. You can complicate it to as many level as you want. And finally, going through the emails, the last one, as we said, was at 151, 158 automatically I got a message. And at 158 again, I got the message that no action is required from your side. This is how you can go ahead and code in Lambda. Use cases are infinite in Lambda. Anything that you can think of, you can code inside Lambda as well. Now, the only thing is this is not going to check if my instance has terminated. But that's fine, because terminated, you would have anyhow created your own different event for termination, because that is something that you never want to see. Now, in case your rule is there, you can always go to CloudWatch or monitoring to check if that instance was, or if that specific event was ever triggered. You have the option to disable or delete it. I am choosing delete because I do not need that event anymore. This has been AWS Lambda and the basic developer tools for you. That is it in this one, and I will see you in the next one. Goodbye.